All right, this is long wire planning. The goal of this is we're going to go through the calendar and then spend a little bit of time both on brainstorming and also on wire feedback.
The daily observations, or what we call the wire internally, is Bridgewater's entryway to our clients in terms of our latest investment thinking. It's a high-paced, demanding daily publication. Greg, is there a gap between what you've said on the quarterly call and the signal that you'd want to reaffirm now?
I think the wires have been good, but what I'd be emphasizing is different. Not a big deal, because I want people to write things they believe. That's the most important thing. The wire would be way better than if they're trying to say, I'm worried about what Greg believes.
So we go to great lengths to make sure that ultimately what lands in your inbox is what we desire to say, even if that is requiring a lot of time to work through because we may disagree.
So the things I disagree is, we've seen the reaction from others. I don't think so. We've seen the first reaction.
The point that I would make is that, the thing that we learned on Friday did not tell me anything new about the world. Is the Fed going to bend? Will the market allow that?
But do you think then the thing you're saying, which is he'll continue to try to weaken the institutions with all of these different things, is there a way that that's reflected in the markets, or do those institutions not matter that much?
You want to do a podcast on this?
If we do a podcast that's not an argument, but framed around that, I think that's useful.
The legacy of the Bridgewater Daily Observations is special because it is the dissemination and expression of our best thinking.
I was just a guy who loved playing the game, struggling to figure out what was the best. That's what the market is like. I was in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. People wanted to speak with me. What did I think about the markets? And so rather than them call in and discuss the markets with me all the time, I thought, well, if I would send them a message, I would be able to then communicate effectively with them all. It was helpful for me to articulate my thinking, and it was helpful for the communication with the clients. And there was a telex machine. It was down in the basement of this. It was literally a boiler room operation.
I was a client for 3 years. So when I first started getting the wire at that time was very much about the market action. And the thing that I liked about it, it was all one unfolding story. You developed a sense of the narrative about what's going on in the world as the story unfolded. I read this thing every day. It's how I learned the markets. Our bank then went through a merger with another bank, and the whole culture changed. And I sent Ray a letter, and I said, I really embrace Bridgewater's philosophy. And then a few days later, I was at Bridgewater.
I came to Bridgewater in 1995 as an intern. I didn't know before I was an intern anything about the daily observations. I very quickly learned, and what was crazy being in college is every day these people are putting out a term paper.
Well, I remember when I got an offer to join Bridgewater, they added me to the BDO distribution. My first impression was there is energy and focus on it every day, not so much as a publication, as much as a forcing mechanism to, well, what do we think is going on?
That willingness to share your thinking consistently was one of the things that attracted me to come back to Bridgewater and make it my life.
Ray would have a new person write the wire 6 months after they started to kind of test very early on, do you have thoughts?
As a new hire, you felt this tremendous responsibility being involved with the daily observations.
When you have to write a wire every day and you don't have that many people, everybody's pitching in that can. I do remember that. I remember the feeling of, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're gonna put out something I'm writing.
Ray was on a trip and he said, I'm gonna be out of the office, so you got the wire. And I said, I read the wire, I don't write the wire. I sort of wrote through this story day after day as the unfolding events were occurring. And so Ray calls from Hong Kong and he goes, hey, that was pretty good. From now on, if I'm out, you're gonna write the wire. 35 years later, I'm still writing the wire.
The key feature of the Bridgewater Daily Observations are the observations. What are the insights that we want to bring to our clients? Our week starts off with the wire planning meeting.
This is long wire planning. We're going to start with the calendar for the next 2 weeks.
What we try to do in wire planning is go to our senior investors and say, listen, what are the most important things that you're wrestling with right now?
An idea for a wire should always come from trying to understand what drives markets. If you don't have good questions, you'll never have good wires.
Most of my wire ideas are coming from trades. Mine tend to be on themes that relate to risk, kind of wrestling with the questions related to those positions.
So we have employment. Kate, you and the macro team have that.
Plan for that wire is basically taking some of the stuff from the draft that we had in the radar, but with more of an employment focus.
That is the thing I find most exciting about covering the macro space. Take something really complicated and try to distill it down into a bite-sized insight that can be understood.
We have the France fiscal wire. Larry, I want to go to you.
This might be a little premature. I think we have some work to do. I'd like to get Schiller's view and Greg's view too.
Yeah, to be clear, I think it's important. I would try to do it.
The CIOs have wholeheartedly encouraged this. Write something that makes sense to you that you think is great. Don't write someone else's wire. Don't answer someone else's question. Answer your own.
With Greg's feedback, I feel like I got a place to go and I feel confident in it.
So once we have our strategic direction, we basically say, okay, these are the topics we want to cover, and we turn it over to our investment teams and they start writing.
I think a great daily observations is one where you pick it up and you feel like you have learned something and have greater clarity of what the cause-effect relationships are in the world and therefore what's likely to happen next.
Really just insightful understanding of the market action and then connecting that up to the unfolding story.
We always say it's like looking over the shoulder of the investor.
For me, you always have to start with the insight, the concepts, then the charts. Once I get to there, the words take care of themselves.
I mean, I really enjoy it. When the way to express the idea really comes together, actually accessing that place where you're like, this is the thought and this is the expression of it, and these things come together and match is really rewarding.
Everybody, when they put pen to paper and they're making sense of the world, they come out of it thinking that they've done a beautiful thing because it's their thoughts and they've worked really hard on it and it feels really personal and it's them grappling with the world. And then you go right into a process where a bunch of other smart people are giving you questions and critiques and telling you why your thoughts are maybe not as great as you thought they are, and all the things you might be missing and all the reasons you might be wrong.
There's no time for niceties. You got to get right to what is true here. What are we actually dealing with? Is this good enough? That's just living our culture every day.
I think that there are like big interesting points, and I'm not sure they pop from the first 2 pages. I'm mostly interested in saying, like, what do you as market practitioners think is most interesting about the French case that we're seeing right now?
I mean, I think you're, I would say overlapping about 80% with what I said.
Yeah, but your first 2 pages are boring. They're about, it's grown its debt faster than peers, boring.
I love when I get critical feedback because it's something that I clearly hadn't thought about. And that is a great part of the process.
The ECB has restructured the Growth and Stability Pact basically to give them a pass until 2027. In large part, most people think because that's when the next general election is in France.
That is interesting and not known, and it's in the wire, but like not in a way where I'm even paid to review it.
Your feedback's good, Phil, and as usual.
The only reason they're giving that feedback is they believe it. They have a credible opinion, and they're trying to make us better and Bridgewater better. I believe that every day, or I wouldn't do this. There's not a single daily observations that hasn't been through what we call a review process where somebody on the other side is asking hard questions about it. We've enshrined that to be a critical must-do process because we know it works. It doesn't matter how senior you are or how much you're an expert in a certain topic. It's always up for debate.
I'm Jim Haskell, editor of the Bridgewater Daily Observations. One of the aspects of Bridgewater that I really want to share with our listeners is the type of debate that occurs between our investors, which ultimately shapes our understanding of how the economic machine works at a root fundamental level and flows through to our systemized investment process. So I think this raises the question, just how much has the world changed this year? And are we really in a new paradigm?
There has been this shift. I wrote about modern mercantilism and the shift towards it.
Thoughtful disagreement is important when the questions are important. Until you sit down and have to synthesize your view to somebody else, you might not really understand it as much as you think you do.
Probably the biggest lesson is when you're forced to do this all the time, you learn how often you're wrong.
You and I probably more disagree on the retaliatory, how escalatory it will be, and how that is going to progress relative to the market pricing, which is the most important thing for investors. Having to distill like the most important arguments for your position and then engage with somebody who is going to push back against that, like that's the most like valuable, important thing I've gotten out of the BDO process.
And for me, the big important thing is how do we make sure our systems are future-proof for the world that we've now entered? That's where our work is. That's where you settle the disagreement by saying, okay, well, how would you know? And then let's make sure we're measuring those things. And so those experiences, some of which reinforce what we're thinking and some of which show us very quickly we're missing something, those experiences stand out. It's when we get great feedback on a wire that changes our view of what's going on.
We give a lot of feedback internally before it goes out. And then what's cool about daily observations is because we send them out, we also then get external feedback.
I think people will appreciate it. The client feedback was good, but then I do want to get into, I think, some of the good constructive feedback here.
One of the great things about the daily observations today is so many great people are reading it. And so I see clients looking at those writings, thinking about what's going on, themselves adding to that framework, offering us feedback, helping improve our thinking.
And that's one of the most important pieces of the video process is actually that feedback stage once the video has already been sent.
It's probably one of the most valuable client service tools we have because it is our constant daily communications vehicle.
As I've gotten to know our clients through the years, having the daily observations just keeps them really close to our thinking.
People are like, man, it's hard to manage money. Like, why are we spending our time writing these observations?
I think it just made Bridgewater better that every day we have had the discipline of writing down our thoughts about the markets and the economies, and it becomes ultimately part of the value added when we're managing money. Probably even greater benefit is the actual, sharing of ideas and insights about what's going on in the world, and it becomes really central to the relationship.
Just like doing it chronologically is another way. We could do it like half and half and still have some of the...
Is it a good idea to force rank the wires, or is it just these are the 50 best wires, day by day we're offering them up?
I would not force rank the wires.
I just think it's impossible.
The specialness of this is that you're going through time. It's been 50 years of us sharing our thoughts with our clients as we experience them. And so what we wanted to do is go back across all those videos, all those times of us sharing, how are we processing the markets and the economies in the moment, and pick out 50 of our favorites and step back and share those.
We took the entire archives of the daily observations and we broke it out into different periods. If I go back to the mid-1980s and you look at why the economy is unresponsive to stimulation and the decline of the American empire.
It was in December 13th, 1986. This was before the 1987 stock market crash. What I was seeing at the time, the plunge in the savings rate, the average work week going down, the trade balance deteriorating. Also, I see in this wire the introduction of my concept of the life cycle of a country.
If you go and you look at the bubble or boom series around 2000.
On one day in April, the market index crashed over 350 points down, and in the last month it's fallen about 20%.
And what was going on was that you had this invention of this fantastic new technology. You had the stock market through the roof, and the economy was strong, even though rates had risen. Is this a bubble or is this a boom? And so we worked our way through kind of step by step, really dissecting the economy, profits, the stock market. That's why we made it a 3-part series.
What a bubble looks like.
This is 3.5 years before the market exploded.
Great to see this date, right? April 21, 2005. Home builders were operating in this way where they were buying up the land and creating all this excess inventory. We're still a long way from the end of this bubble, what it was like to navigate watching these things happen, knowing they were unsustainable, but not knowing when the unsustainability would hit. And certainly the buildup in 2006, 2007 taught me about how long these kind of things could take to play out.
And then, of course, we get one of the signature events in Bridgewater Daily Observations history, which is the global financial crisis.
It's a scene enough to inject fear into any financier, banker, and the odd politician too.
In anticipating and going through the 2008 financial crisis, we did our own stress test of the financial system. And so as a result, we showed Tim Geithner, who was the Treasury Secretary at the time, and then they went out and did the stress test. When they did that stress test, it was virtually identical to our stress test. I wrote a wire. The title of the wire that I wrote was "We Agree!" And then he brought it to President Obama. Now that was a wire that was particularly satisfying.
This will become a pandemic. And yesterday, the CDC, in fact, basically said that.
This is the big picture Back to the Future from January 3rd, 2024.
Now we're out of the peak COVID era. I think we're in a fundamentally different era. Inflation no longer a non-factor. Monetary policy slower to ease, quicker to tighten. Acute deleveraging's behind us. Now the big issue is that the deleveraging was painless because the government took on all the debt. I still think this was a great forward-looking piece that pretty much captured the most important things that did end up mattering in the next, few years of market action.
This compendium is an archive of our compounded understanding through time.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow, this is like old school printing.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much here. I think these wires reflect really well Bridgewater.
The wire was fundamental to building the business because when you have no track record, the only thing people can evaluate you on is your thinking.
In my own memory of these things, I remember more the mistakes than the really good insights. I know that we made more really good insights than we made mistakes.
When I look at the compendium of the 50 greatest daily observations, it's emotional because it's our intellectual history.
It's rare now in a world of tweets and so on to have this deep content, charts, data, thinking at this depth level. That is hard to find in this world.
If you have something that is of high quality and goes on for 50 years, it can be relied on. It is the thing that binds us in the past to today through the future.
And as long as we're truthful to what we're thinking, people will be interested.